The webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us to discuss the Tehama Olive Ranch. My name is Michael Eisman. We'll get into introduction of all of our speakers today soon. But for today's presentation, we'll give a brief overview of AcreTrader and some background on farmland investing and how the platform works. And this live presentation will be recorded and emailed out to everybody after the webinar. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the session, and there's a little chat box on the right side of your screen. If you have questions throughout, we will address as many as we can that aren't actually addressed in the presentation at the end of this with a live Q&A portion. And with that, we will get through a couple disclaimers here and give a brief introduction to your speakers. As I mentioned, my name is Michael Eisman. My background is in finance. I lead our investor relations team here at AcreTrader, where we focus on education around farmland as an asset class, around the AcreTrader platform, how it works, and then deal-specific education as we have offerings that come onto the platform. So prior to AcreTrader, I worked with an entrepreneurial support organization where we help startup founders find capital, find a product market fit, make sure they're solving a problem with the business that they're starting. In that, I worked with hundreds of different entrepreneurs and early stage businesses, and that was how I had the opportunity to meet the founder here at AcreTrader, and the team, and really have enjoyed everything that we've done building this team over the last couple of years and working with countless people like Drew. So Drew, I'll let you introduce yourself and then we can get the presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So my career to date has been entirely in capital markets. Most of that has been within research. Carter and I worked together actually for 6 years. He was also a client on the buy side for 4 or 5 years before he moved on to found AcreTrader, and I've really, kept up with AcreTrader's progress. Really always kind of believed in the core mission of creating access to this unique asset class for individuals. So when Carter called, earlier this year to, ask if I want to be interested in joining the team, I really jumped at the opportunity. And my role here on the farm team is to focus on bringing unique sponsor-led opportunities onto the platform. And, this offering is really a good representation of that. We have arguably the best olive grower in the country who has sourced this opportunity and is co-investing alongside investors on the AcreTrader platform. And this really shows how, we provide growers with the opportunity to expand their operations and to co-invest in their ranches alongside investors on the platform, and really creates a mutually, beneficial outcome for both sponsors and investors. And we can certainly walk through all of that here today.
Thanks, Drew. So we can take videos off now and we'll join at the Q&A. Tim and Adam actually are here from the sponsor team, and they'll be joining us at the Q&A at the end. So we'll try to get through all of the presentation here quickly. And we typically, these webinars are 30 minutes. We actually extended it to 45 minutes so that we could have more time for you to meet the sponsor team here as well. All right, so first, AcreTrader, what do we do and why do we exist? And we're here to connect investors with farmland. Farmland has been an incredible asset class with strong historical returns, but there's been very, very high barriers to entry for investors, like upfront capital requirements, difficulty of sourcing deals and finding good opportunities to invest in land, and then the ongoing management and operations. And so most people have been ruled out. So AcreTrader's mission is to make buying and selling land common, transparent, and easy. And we do that by allowing investors to participate in offerings and review offerings in just minutes online, as well as support the growth of farmers by providing new ways to access capital and grow their operations. And so why farmland? This chart, you can see farmland positioned at the top left. On the vertical axis, that's the average annual growth rate for the returns over time, and this is over the last 30 years. On the x-axis, or the horizontal axis, there you see volatility, which would be price swings over time. So farmland has been able to, compared to many or most other major asset classes, provide very consistent returns with strong performance with limited price swings over time. This next slide is not meant to frighten anyone. There's still millions or hundreds of millions of farmland in the U.S. alone that is available to grow on, but we do want to highlight the supply and demand trend that has us very excited about the long-term growth and part of what has provided that long-term growth of farmland as an asset class. So the trend line here shows this shrinking number of arable or farmable acres per capita in the U.S. And it's clear that there is less farmland per person as more acres are pulled out of production. And there are some natural forces pulling them out, but development is the largest. And we're actually losing about 3 acres per minute in the U.S. alone. 3 acres there's about 900 million acres of farmland if you include pasture land, about 300 million acres of cropland, which would be row crops and permanent crops. So there's a growing global population and increasing demands for the food, fuels, and fiber that are grown on these farms. And you pair that with a shrinking supply of arable land, farmland has been able to produce these strong historical returns. And while we're clearly bullish on farmland as an asset class, you do need to buy the right farm at the right price in order to have these strong returns that we see. And so to start that process, you have to look at a lot of farms, and we have a large network that brings a lot of deals into our pipeline that we can evaluate. So no to many off the bat, but those that we are interested in go through a very thorough diligence process where we gather, analyze, and verify information associated with the farm. And I won't go into every detail that our diligence process would try to uncover, but ultimately we were looking for farms with a very strong water situation, appropriate soil for the intended crops, and then strong operators or farmers that we can partner with. And there's not a great aggregator of all of the relevant information that you would need. And so we need to have both tools, which we have public and proprietary tools that we use, and people that have a background in agriculture and understanding how to evaluate these investments before moving forward on them. And so next year, I want to highlight, from your perspective, while there's a lot that goes into it, we've created a very simple model for investors to participate in. So each farm would go into a unique LLC, and you as an investor would own shares of that LLC. All of the management would be handled by AcreTrader to make it a very passive investment. This model shows what we typically use for row crop offerings. That would be like corn, soybeans, rice, something that is planted and harvested each year. In those cases, the LLC buys the farm or has the title to the farm, and then we would rent it out to a farmer. They would pay rent each year, and that's what your yield or your distribution would be made of, would be your portion of that rent that would be paid each year. And you're not really participating in the operation as much. That would be more their operation. They would rent this out to just rent out a farm to just expand their operation. And we can go on to the next slide here that's a little bit different than the direct ownership model. We call it the sponsored offering. That would be usually used for permanent crops like this orchard. A permanent crop would not be planted and harvested each year, but it would have a longer life like an olive tree. So we would prefer a longer term incentive alignment with the operator, and we'll go into the structure of this specific deal here, but they're taking care of a tree that has a lifespan over the coming decades. So rather than only investing in the land or the farm itself, you would be investing in the farm, but also in the operation. And your distributions each year would not be from rent, but it would be from the profit generated by that operation. And you would receive distributions for that. So that's the case for this olive ranch. I will now mute myself, and you will be joined by Drew, where you can learn about the olive industry and the specific deal. And I'll join you again. Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. So let's dive into the specific offering. This is the Tehama Olive Ranch. I would note that this specific image is of Black Butte Olive Ranch, which is another property managed by the sponsor team here. We show this picture because it's a good demonstration of his orchard management style, which is something we're going to dive into a little bit later. The remainder of the pictures that you see through these slides are of the ranch itself. So diving into the specific property, this is, the ranch is in Tehama County, which is in the northwestern end of California's Central Valley. 246 total acres, 150 of which are planted to arbequina olives. 60 acres are planted to Chandler walnuts. The olive orchards were planted in 2010 with primarily the arbequina variety, with small percentages of koroneiki and arbosana olives that are interplanted for pollination purposes. Arbequina olives are the species best suited for high-density planting in Tehama County. And of the 60 acres of walnuts, about 28 acres were planted in 2010. The remaining acreage was planted between 2013 and 2015, so all of the walnut trees are now in full production. Looking at the state view here, the ranch again is in Tehama County in the northwestern end of California's Central Valley. You can see the property in red here, just south of Red Bluff, California. And here's the entire 246 acres highlighted in green. Looking at the soil, the majority of the property contains loamy soils, which have a pretty healthy balance of sand, silt, and clay. And when managed correctly, olives perform well in many soil types. Olives really just require well-drained soils for the greatest productivity. That is the case across this ranch. Hillgate and Moda loams are considered well to moderately well-drained, and Arbuckle and Kimball loams are considered well-drained. Looking at the water profile, so due to this ranch's location in the north central valley, and the fact that we have dual source water if needed, and the relatively low water intensity for olives, this property is very well positioned from a water standpoint. We're seeing a significant divergence in the Central Valley of California farmland between land with adequate water versus land without. And the location of this property in the northern Central Valley is important due to the more sustainable aquifers and the greater level of rainfall here. The existing well pumps on this property are sized for 1,200 gallons per minute. That compares to the required 1,000 gallons per minute for the crop. In addition to having sufficient well water, if ever needed, the property actually has access to surface water through the El Camino Irrigation District. And because the well water here is actually more sufficient than what the property needs, the sponsor actually does not intend to use district water, but it is nice to have that secondary backup if ever needed. I would also note that the ranch's well pump was tested in October of this year and was found to be in good condition. And the well itself has also been scoped and found to be in good working order. Again, highlighting the benefits of this ranch's location in the valley. Here you can see the property in blue surrounded by orange. The subbasin here is not considered to be critically overdrafted. And what this means is that the regulatory regime that's likely to be imposed on the aquifer in Tehama County as SGMA goes into effect will be less restrictive than the regulations that will be likely to be imposed in the southern part of the valley, because the California Department of Water Resources has already determined that the aquifer here is not critically overdrafted. It's also important to note that high density olive orchards require about 1 3/4 to 2 1/4 acre feet of water per year, which makes olives a relatively low water intensity crop when compared to other permanent plantings. And then finally, another differentiating factor between this ranch and properties in the South Central Valley is that this immediate area of the Northern Central Valley receives almost 25 inches of rainfall per year. That's twice as much as you receive in Fresno in the South Central portion of the valley for comparison purposes. So we'll touch on each of these aspects as to why California olives. The highlight here is that there are very strong domestic demand trends for extra virgin olive oil. You have the emergence of a premium California product and the strength of the operator with whom we're partnering. So first, really just hitting on the demand trends. So we've talked about this in the past on past webinars, but when we look for permanent crop opportunities, a key criteria for us is that the crop itself shows good demand trends and that the crop has some level of supply constraint. And we certainly see that with California extra virgin olive oil. You can see here that olive oil consumption has increased almost 3% on average over the last 20 years. And this shows global consumption and really the large addressable market for Californian extra virgin olive oil to supply into. The United States represents 13% of global consumption and trails similar developed economies in terms of per capita consumption. So this really speaks to that large addressable market that we're supplying into. And California supplies less than 5% of the extra virgin olive oil consumed in the United States. We really see this opportunity for a higher quality product to capture significant market share, and that's something we're going to touch on here in the upcoming slides. So again, touching on the differentiated premium product, olive oil has multiple grades, the highest of which is extra virgin olive oil. And extra virgin olive oil really reflects certain taste and chemical characteristics and is unadulterated by other oils. The International Olive Council, which really sets the European standards for extra virgin olive oil and lesser grades, classifies extra virgin as produced entirely by mechanical means without the use of solvents. It must be under temperatures that will not degrade the oil, so less than 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And there are also certain measures of free fatty acid levels and measures of oxidation. And then finally, there's a panel of tasters that must find it free from defects and from reaching certain levels of fruitiness. American consumers have been buying increasing quantities of premium priced olive oils, and we believe the demand for premium California oil has also been increasing. And again, although California produces less than 0.5% of the world's supply of olive oil, the state's quickly becoming known as a producer of high quality extra virgin olive oil. So here we show the global supply picture. Important takeaway here is that historically olive oil production is dominated by the European Union. Olive oil is produced throughout the Mediterranean countries, particularly Spain, which is almost 50% of global supply, then Italy, Greece, and some North African countries such as Tunisia and Morocco. In addition, Australia and Argentina and increasingly so California are emerging as significant oil producers. What you see on the top right graph here is that almost 60% of global production comes from higher cost older orchards. And again, the U.S. represents 0.5% of global supply, yet consumes 13% of edible olive oil globally. So this chart really shows the growth of U.S. olive oil production over the last decade and a timeline of how California extra virgin olive oil is emerging as a premium product in the domestic market. In 2010, a UC Davis study showed that almost 70% of imported oils failed to meet the standards for extra virgin olive oil. Of the top 5 selling imported so-called extra virgin olive oil brands in the U.S., 73% of the samples failed the IOC's standards to even qualify as extra virgin olive oil. I would note that in that study, none of the California or Australian samples failed this test. In order to capitalize on this opportunity, in 2014, the Olive Oil Commission of California, which regulates the production and labeling of California oils, and really they set their own standards, which are more stringent for extra virgin olive oil, was stood up to represent the industry. And then, California olive oil, I would also note, is subject to a mandatory program of government sampling and testing to verify that it meets quality standards. And this is supervised by the Olive Oil Commission of California. So increasingly so, California is turning into a trusted source of premium quality extra virgin olive oil. So, as we saw on the last slide, the olive oil industry in California is a young industry. There are 3 dominant brands of high quality California extra virgin olive oil. Cobram Estate is an Australian company that really dominates the olive oil industry in Australia. They entered the U.S. market in 2014, and they are now the number 2 brand of 100% California extra virgin olive oil in U.S. supermarkets, behind California Olive Ranch. In the company's fiscal year 2021, their U.S. sales grew 63%, and California extra virgin olive oil is really the key growth driver, or a key growth driver for the company. And what's most noteworthy here, along with the absolute growth, is what the company calls out in its annual report, which really confirmed a lot of our on-the-ground due diligence. Cobram Estate and other California extra virgin olive oil brands are constrained by a lack of California olives. These brands really focus their effort on building their brand awareness and less on growing their own olives. Cobram Estate and others will really need to rely on third-party ranches, such as Tehama Olive Ranch, in order to meet the demand for California extra virgin olive oil. And I'd also call out here that Adam Engelhardt, who you'll get to hear from in the Q&A portion, was hired by Cobram Estate in 2014 as its CEO of its U.S. operations to build out the Australian company's California olive operations. And prior to joining Cobram Estates, Adam managed the development of the #1 California extra virgin olive oil brand, California Olive Ranch. So we'll touch on that more, but really kind of highlights the world-class sponsor that we are partnering with in this ranch. So here you can see that the historically Italian extra virgin olive oil has carried a premium to other EU countries due to its perceived higher quality. This premium market is really the target market for California extra virgin olive oil companies. And history has demonstrated that consumers will pay a premium for a perceived higher quality product. Again, I'd also note that UC Davis study we referenced earlier, 11% of the top selling premium Italian brands failed the International Olive Council's own standards to qualify as extra virgin olive oil. None of the California samples failed these tests. So the combination of high quality California oils, the confidence that consumers have in California oils as a result of regulations and marketing campaigns conducted by California olive oil brands has really resulted in California oil similar to Italian oil commanding a premium price over Spanish and other oils. Currently, the California premium is about 40% or more over prices that are published by the IOC for the Spanish olive oil market. So turning again to the sponsor opportunity, one thing we did hear over and over again was that Adam Engelhardt is one of the premiers, if not the premier olive operator in the state of California. This image we highlight because it's a good representation of Adam's management style, super high density olive plantings that are hand pruned. This is one of Adam's other ranches, again named Black Butte, that was referenced earlier. The Tehama Olive Ranch property is planted also in the super high density model, though it has been mechanically pruned throughout its lifespan. Adam plans on incorporating hand pruning to amplify the yields across the orchard, and expects to take one season in order to do the remedial work that is needed. And by 2023, the orchard should be fully producing at yields of close to 5 tons per acre. So now I really want to just turn and talk a little bit more about the sponsors that we're partnering with here on this opportunity. So a bit more about Adam. He is a 5th generation California farmer, started in the olive industry in 1998 when he joined his family's farm. From 2008 to 2014, he helped grow California Olive Ranch's acreage from 500 planted acres to 10,000 planted acres. And in 2014, Adam joined Cobram Estates, which was named Boundary Bend at the time, as their president and CEO of their U.S. operations. Adam currently serves as the president of Engelhardt Ag Services, which is going to be the farm management for this property. And it's also owned by Alta California Olive Partners, our sponsor partner here. And Adam is also the vice chairman of the Olive Oil Commission of California and chairman emeritus of the American Olive Oil Producers Association. Adam's joined by his ACOP colleague, Tim Tomlinson. Tim has a long career in tech corporate law. He currently serves as a director for 2 technology companies, as well as a director for Portola Minerals, which is the largest supplier of ag lime in Northern California. So we really feel like we've sponsored or partnered with an all-star sponsor team here. Here you see some of the past companies that Adam has had experience with. And, again, California Olive Ranch, he oversaw its expansion from 2008 to 2014 from 500 to 10,000 acres. That's now the #1 brand of extra virgin olive oil in California. And again, he really led and spearheaded the efforts for Cobram Estates, both in growing their acreage and in building out their milling capacity. So here we want to highlight the organizational chart on this offering, as we highlight in every sponsor offering, and this is very typical for our sponsor model. AcreTrader investors are investing alongside our sponsor partner and sponsor operator, who will directly manage the ranch. The ACOP team will be investing 20% of the equity, and investors on the AcreTrader platform will be investing 80% of the equity. And again, this is really representative of why we use this model for our permanent crop investments. It allows AcreTrader investors to invest alongside operators who have true skin in the game, which is a critical criteria for us. So now turning to the financial projections of the offering. I'd also note that this picture here is a picture of the walnuts on the property, just to kind of give you a glimpse there. So, we'd like to remind you that for every sponsored offering, we make a full financial model available to you on the platform. That is available in the document section of the Tehama Olive Ranch offering. We encourage you to download that Excel file and review it on your own. But here are some of the broad assumptions here. Again, the sponsor is participating alongside investors, investing 20% of the equity, a typical fee load structure that we see with most of our sponsor offerings. We feel that the price assumptions and cost assumptions underwritten in this model are conservative in nature. There is a typical 80-20 split once the preferred hurdle rate has been covered, and there's a 10-year expected hold on this opportunity. Here you see the sources and uses of capital for this offering. And this is a breakdown of the one-time and the ongoing fees. These fees are based, first on covering overhead, and second, really to incentivize the sponsor to perform on behalf of investors. AcreTrader investors will receive an annual 4% cumulative preferred return. And after that 4% return is distributed to investors, the remaining annual profits are distributed 80% to investors, 20% to the sponsors in the form of their carry. And the overall deal preferred return also is 5% per annum, I should highlight. Again, this just calls out the projected cash flows and IRR over the life of the project. Please take a look at the financial model under the Documents tab in the offering, and you can walk through all this in detail. If you have any questions, get them to us either by phone or by email, and we will answer them for you. The sponsor, anticipates distributing these amounts, but no distributions are required until liquidation as per the operating agreement. I would also highlight that reminder. So, again, kind of highlighting the overview. The equity raise here is $4 million. The minimum investment is $25,000 per unit. The estimated average cash yield is 4.2%. Distributions will begin in 2023. Beginning in 2024, the sponsor expects to average between 4.9 and 5.2% annual cash-on-cash distributions. So with that, we are going to turn our cameras back on, and we are going to open up the Q&A section. We're going to be joined by the sponsor team, Adam Engelhart and Tim Tomlinson. I would encourage you to submit questions using the GoToMeeting chat feature. We're going to pause for just a second here to make sure we get all of our questions together. So I should turn my camera on as well. So, Adam, one of the first questions, can you walk us through the contract structure that you have in place with the miller? Where will the olives from the olive ranch actually be shipped? How is pricing determined?
Currently, the property is contracted to California Olive Ranch, which, as you mentioned earlier, is the largest processor and marketer in the state. That contract pays the grower on a per ton basis, with the amount per ton determined by the percentage of oil in the fruit delivered. It's important to note that there's really three there are three large processors in the state, all of which whom are actively seeking new contracts, and a number of smaller processors also actively seeking new contracts. Most of those contracts can be described really in three different ways. There's a per ton contract, the grower receiving a fixed amount based on the oil content in the fruit per ton. The second type is the grower receiving a fixed amount per gallon of oil derived from the fruit that the grower delivers to the processor. The third of which is referred to as a pool contract, where the grower delivers the crop to the processor. It is then processed for a fee and then marketed, with the grower receiving the proceeds from the sale of that oil, which again fluctuates based on the market. It is our opinion that the per ton contract and the fixed per gallon price contract really are the superior two contract types for the grower. So in this case, since the ranch does have a current contract on a per ton basis, we intend to continue that contract through the duration and look at other options that are available as that contract expires. We'll make a decision of which way to go once that point is raised. But it is a good contract that the farm is operating under right.
Okay, another question here for Adam. Can you talk about your olive orchard management style, maybe how it's different than other growers in the industry?
Sure. So for really now, so olive oil prices, I think as you mentioned, particularly prices to the grower in California have been steadily increasing for the last 7 years, which I have found because of that increase in value for the olives and the resulting oil, it behooves the grower to invest a bit more in the cultural practices to increase the yield. It's really a incremental return question. So with oil at the value it is now, it makes sense to really maximize the yield. And some of those things we do to do that are a mixture of mechanical and hand pruning, which does add cost, but increases the yield on the orchard on a per ton basis. And more importantly, really improves the consistency of the yield and the quality of the fruit. We also probably more aggressively farm the orchard in terms of water application as well as fertilizer, again, to produce the regrowth and sustain a healthy crop load. And that's really a choice that we make to take advantage of one of the price. And I'm also firmly of the opinion, as a farming philosophy, maximizing yield is always the best strategy. So we really farm our orchards to maximize yield and in turn minimize our cost to produce a unit. In this case, a ton or a gallon of oil, thereby increasing the return. In some cases, olives have been underfarmed, in my opinion. Try really an effort to make a minimized cost rather than maximize return and maximize yield, which is not a philosophy that we embrace.
Okay. Another one here. With the sponsor co-investing 20% of the equity, what are some of the aspects of this property that made you most excited about it?
So I've been very aware of this property since 2009, when it was first being developed to olive and walnut orchard. And really what attracted me to it is it has very good soils, very suitable for both walnuts and olives. It's an excellent water area, a top-notch water area. And probably most importantly, the seller, the current operator with whom I've had a relationship with since 2009, is a good operator and really operated this farm as his home farm, his home ranch, and took a lot of pride in the property. So the ranch is in excellent condition. It really is a turnkey property. And the crop history supports that. It has a good historical crop, both the walnuts and the olives. There's really no rehab work to be required. The orchards are in and entering into full production. So I'm really attracted to the property because of its condition and its location. That was our motivation for wanting to come in with such a large sponsor contribution.
There are a couple questions here on fire risk. I feel like we should, there's several of those in the queue. So maybe, Adam, if you want to address that.
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of press, obviously, on California wildfires. Primarily, the wildfires have been located in either the grazing lands or the timber areas on the western hills and mountains or the eastern hills and mountains. rarely do we see fires that enter the valley floor, primarily because most of the valley floor is irrigated and is surrounded by a network of highways and county roads and things like that. So, it's dry in California in the summer and the fall, so never say never. But, irrigated croplands and orchards are much less inclined to fire or wildfire than the areas in the mountains, sort of the hinterlands, if that makes sense.
You mentioned the walnuts earlier, and there's a photo on one of Drew's slides. There's some questions about that as well. Obviously this is primarily an olive investment, but how should investors think about the walnut component to this investment in this orchard?
I really like walnuts right now. So, we're actually looking into additional investment in additional walnut properties right now. And I think the California walnut industry, because of a period of depressed prices, there are good value in acquisitions to be had right now with a crop that the price is on an upswing right now. The key with walnuts is really the climate, the soil, and the water has to be right. They are much more finicky than olives in terms of soil type. And the reason I like all the walnuts on this property in particular, as well as other areas in Tehama County, is you do have those well-drawing, loamy soils. You have good water, with walnuts take quite a bit more water than olives. And then you have a climate that's shown to produce good yields, particularly of the Chandler variety. And good yields with good meat coloring. So much of the walnut price is paid based on the quality and the coloring of the nut. And historically, the Tehama County area of the North State does provide a much lighter coloring. That will be tougher and tougher for the South State to achieve as water becomes hard to come by. I'm very bullish about walnuts in the North State right now. And I really like the mix of walnuts and olives. So if you look at this property is very well resourced when it comes to water, but the combination of the walnuts and olives is good because you can really select your highest quality land in the soil type for the walnuts and use the olives on the secondary. But most importantly, you have two very high value crops, but your overall water footprint is greatly reduced as compared to a planting that would be entirely walnuts or entirely almonds and things like that. So I think it's a very good risk mitigation strategy, having a mix of planting walnuts and the olives.
Adam, there's a question on managing labor. Maybe that'd be a good opportunity to talk about the team that you have at Engelhardt Ag Services.
So we manage about 900 acres of orchards right now, all within a very close proximity to this project. And the model we've taken is any of our mechanical work required is done with machines we own, including harvesting. Most of our full-time needs, equipment operators, harvester operators, things like that, are done with our full-time year-round employees. And only very seldomly do we augment our labor with outside part-time and contract labor, primarily during a brief period of time for our pruning in the springtime. Historically, the access to labor in the North State has been much easier than it's been in other parts of California. I think California labor cost is increasing. We have legislation increasing labor cost yearly, but our labor demand on a per acre basis is fairly minimal because so much of this is mechanical harvested. Almost everything's done mechanically with few exceptions. But I like to control, as our full-time employees, the majority of our workforce for that reason. It's continuity. We're not subject to the whim of seasonal labor.
There's another question here about the choice to use groundwater primarily over surface water. And isn't surface water typically cheaper and cleaner?
In this case, no. So in this case, the groundwater is of very high quality and very cheap to pump. So it is, in fact, cheaper to utilize groundwater in this case. Definitely not the case in other areas of California where you have groundwater quality issues and significant depths to pump from. In this case, our pumping water level is 41 feet below the wellhead surface, so it's quite efficient and cheap to lift and pressurize. Actually, cheaper to lift and pressurize than it is to pressurize and purchase district water.
question of if this is a turnkey property, why is the first distribution not scheduled before 2023? I think that's probably a good opportunity to address the remedial work that you're planning on implementing.
Yeah, so a couple things. So we won't have any receivables in 2022 because the seller is keeping 21 crop. So from when we harvest in 2022, we will not receive any distributions from processors, either walnuts or olives, until 2023. That's the primary reason why the distributions are delayed to 2023. And there will be a slight increase in operational costs in 2022, really for some catch-up hand pruning on the olives. But primarily, we don't start receiving payments for the crop until Q1 of 2023, and really aren't fully paid out for the 2022 crop until September of 2023.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to look through these. There's a question about what's the story on the other well that is not in use. I don't know if you'd like to walk through that, Adam.
It's an old well. It was set up, the property was historically set up as irrigated pasture. And there's an older well there that they had flood bowls on that they were using to flood for irrigated pasture. But the seller at the time of his purchasing the property chose to put in a new well and really didn't run the old well very much. We haven't done any investigation on it just because we really don't see a need for it with the existing well and the district water rights.
There's a couple questions here about investment process, timing, kind of what to expect. So I'll hit those, and we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left here. So then Drew and Adam, you guys can sign up and cover a couple more. But right now, Drew mentioned that you can see documents of the financial model on the document section. So all of the information for this farm, recording of this webinar will also be available there soon. Can be found on the investment page of our website, and then you can drill into the financial model, the PPM. All of those are available on the document section as long as you're logged into your account. The only thing that will change at 1 o'clock Central tomorrow is that there's an Invest Now option that becomes available on that page, and that's when you can go through and fill your subscription. Right now, I'm sending a video, and it's a 2 or 3 minute walkthrough of the investment process of what to expect in the chat. You should see a link there if you want to prepare. If it's your first investment with us, or if you're considering making an investment. And the only things to do ahead of time, you could finish creating your account. You can verify your identity. There's a KYC identity check in your user dashboard. And then if you have not already, you can upload your accredited investor verification documents in your user dashboard as well. Those are the kind of things you can knock out ahead of time. If you have any questions about those, please feel free to follow up one-on-one or email info@acretrader.com. But we're happy to assist with all of that.
Yeah, there's a question on here about how the real estate fits into the purchase price and exit valuation. And really, to Michael's point right there, that is all broken out very clearly in the model that is on the website. Effectively, that was underwritten at a pretty conservative cap rate, in our opinion. So I would encourage everyone to please look at the model to understand those dynamics and really understand how that all fits in. Well, I think we're kind of running up on time here. So again, the offering is going live tomorrow, November 10th, 1 p.m. Central, 11 a.m. Pacific time. Any questions that were not answered here, we will work to get to you. So please, I encourage you to, reach out to myself, the IR team, anyone that's needed. And we will certainly chase down any questions that were not answered here on the webinar today. So I'd really like to thank Tim, Adam, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you guys soon.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.